Two men in fake uniforms tried to drag her off her own porch. What they didn't know, she was CIA, and she was ready. You ever move somewhere and just know you're not exactly welcome? Not by what people say, but by what they don't. The stares, the sudden silence when you walk by, that feeling like you've just tracked dirt across someone's polished floor, except the dirt is just you. That's how it felt when Danielle McCallister pulled into her new driveway in Mission Viejo, California. She had just bought a 2-story home with a wraparound porch, magnolia tree out front, and the kind of peace she'd been craving for years. Retired, well, transitioned out. From the CIA, Danielle was only 38, but her bones carried more miles than most. She'd seen things most people couldn't pronounce. But what shook her the most now was how loud silence could be when you're the only black woman on a street of retirees with identical lawn gnomes. Danielle wasn't flashy. Loose jeans, tank top, and a flannel tied around her waist, locks pulled back into a bun. Her hands were always busy, gardening, sanding down old furniture, adjusting a home security camera here and there. She kept to herself. That was the deal. Low profile. The first week, she tried waving at the neighbors, got tight nods. By week 3, they stopped pretending to see her. Except for one woman, Brenda Littlefield, 62. Stayed watching from her window like her HOA dues paid for surveillance. Brenda was the kind who remembered every house number, every recycling day, and every blade of grass out of place. One morning, Danielle was sipping coffee on her porch, minding her own business, when Brenda strutted across the lawn in her house slippers. "Morning," Brenda said. No smile. Danielle nodded slowly. "Morning." Brenda looked down at the wicker chair Danielle had placed on the porch, then the small metal table with a single potted aloe. "You know," Brenda began, "this neighborhood follows certain aesthetic standards." Danielle looked at her over the rim of her mug. "This neighborhood has a lot of things, but I don't remember voting you porch police." Brenda narrowed her eyes. "Just letting you know the HOA takes violations seriously." Danielle smiled, calm, unbothered. "Great. Then they can tell me themselves." Brenda stood a second longer like she wanted to say more, but turned and walked off. Danielle sat back, watched her disappear through her front door. Then she turned her head slightly toward the tiny security camera tucked under the porch light. She'd already saved the footage, because experience taught her something real early. When folks can't find a real reason to come for you, they'll make one up. But this wasn't paranoia. Not anymore. That night, she logged onto her laptop, opened a secure program most people never knew existed. She typed one line. Potential soft probe, location, residential, passive surveillance, activated. She didn't know exactly what Brenda was stirring up, but if it was anything worth seeing, the cameras she installed inside and outside would catch it, and she wouldn't be watching alone. But what Danielle didn't expect was that the real threat wasn't Brenda. It was coming on Saturday, and it would walk straight up her driveway like it owned the place. Saturday morning came like any other. Blue sky, birds doing their thing. Danielle was on the porch again. Same chair, same coffee, same aloe plant soaking up sun like it paid rent. Peaceful, at least for the first few minutes. Then she saw them. 2 men, mid-30s maybe, coming up the sidewalk side by side. They weren't rushing, but their walk had a purpose. Like they'd been here before. Like they were used to being listened to, matching navy polo shirts with Brookstone Glen HOA enforcement embroidered on the chest, khaki tactical pants, heavy boots. One had a laminated badge clipped to his belt. The other carried a clipboard and a cheap-looking radio that squawked random static like someone left a toy on. Danielle raised an eyebrow. She didn't move from her chair. They stopped at the foot of her porch steps. The guy with the badge spoke first. "Ma'am, morning. We're with the Brookstone HOA Compliance Division. We're doing spot checks on community regulations. Got a few notes on your property." Danielle took a sip of coffee. "You got a name?" "Yeah, Officer Nichols. My colleague here is Officer Breck." "Officer?" she repeated, her tone flat. "You're police now?" "It's just a title, ma'am." Breck chimed in. "We're here for a routine inspection. Just need you to step off the porch so we can assess and document." Danielle looked down at them, then slowly set her mug on the table. "No." Nichols blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You're not setting foot on my porch. You're not walking my property. not without proper authorization. So, unless you've got paperwork or a warrant, I suggest you take your little clipboard and keep walking." There was a pause. Nichols's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being told no. "Ma'am, refusal to comply with HOA inspections can result in fines or formal action." Danielle stood now, calm, still barefoot, still casual. "Show me the ordinance. Show me something with a signature, something notarized. Otherwise, you're trespassing." Breck stepped up one stair, just one. Danielle didn't flinch. "That's close enough." "We can have you removed from the property," he said. "For a chair and a plant?" Danielle laughed once. "You don't even live here, do you?" Nichols shifted. "Ma'am, I checked the HOA board last week, cross-referenced names and photos. Neither of you are listed, so if you're enforcement, then I'm Beyonce." The static on their radios popped again. Empty noise, no dispatch, no call signs, just theater. Danielle took a step forward, not threatening, just confident. "You got 30 seconds to get off my property." Nichols frowned. "You sure about that?" "Dead sure." Breck's hand moved toward Danielle's arm. She caught his wrist. Quick, clean. Her grip locked so fast he didn't have time to react. She held it tight, pressure on the tendons. "That was a mistake," she said softly. Nichols started to move in, but stopped when he saw something in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even anger. It was calculation. She let go of Breck's wrist. He staggered back one step, just one. Danielle adjusted her shirt like nothing had happened. "You two better walk away before you find out what neighborhood enforcement really looks like." They stared at her, weighing their next move. But before either of them could act, something shifted, off the street, out of view, just enough to make them pause. Because Danielle hadn't been bluffing, and her reinforcements were already closer than they realized. Breck backed off, not much, just enough to mask the shake in his wrist. Nichols tried to recover the upper hand. "This attitude isn't going to help you," he said, straightening up like he still held the cards. Danielle didn't blink. "Neither will impersonating authority. So let me make this clear. You step on my porch again, I'll file charges for attempted assault and trespassing, and I'll have the footage to back it up." "You recording us?" Danielle pointed to the light fixture above them. Tiny red glow, camera tucked neatly underneath. "Try waving," she said, tone cool as ice. "It's streaming live." Nichols exchanged a look with Breck. That was the first real crack in their act. They'd expected someone who would fold, not someone who knew the game better than they did. Still, they weren't ready to back down. Breck squared his shoulders. "We've dealt with difficult residents before." Danielle smiled, tight, precise. "That right? You break into their homes too?" "You're escalating this," Nichols snapped. "We gave you a chance to comply." Danielle tilted her head, eyes scanning their outfits again. No real name tags, generic boots. Their radios hadn't uttered a single word since they arrived. Not even fake codes, just random static. These weren't HOA reps. These were amateurs in costume. "You don't work for the HOA," she said. "You don't even live in Mission Viejo." Nichols hesitated just for a second too long. "You don't know that." Danielle took a step down onto the top stair. Now she was eye level. "Actually, I do. Public records, voter rolls, car plates. I know where everyone on this block lives, what time trash pickup is, and what day Brenda Littlefield's pacemaker app sends its signal to her daughter. I've been watching, just like you've been watching me." Breck shifted uneasily. "You're paranoid." "No," she said sharply. "I'm prepared. Big difference." Then the radio clipped to Breck's belt, chirped. Not static. This time a voice. "Units in position. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." It wasn't their voice. Breck snatched the radio off his belt, clicked it off. Too late. Danielle raised an eyebrow. "Oops." Nichols's voice dropped. "What did you do?" "I did what any law-abiding resident does when strangers in cosplay show up making threats. I called someone." Breck reached for his waistband. Danielle didn't hesitate. She stepped forward fast, catching his forearm mid-motion and twisting him sideways in one fluid motion. He grunted and dropped the radio. It clattered on the step. Nichols reached into his pocket. "Don't," Danielle said, voice low, firm, measured. But he didn't listen. And then 3 sharp clicks echoed from behind the hedge line across the street. Not loud, but distinct. Danielle didn't even have to look. She knew the signal. Seconds later, two unmarked black SUVs rounded the corner, tires humming against the pavement. No sirens, just speed and purpose. They stopped right at the edge of her driveway. Four men in plain clothes stepped out. No nonsense. One of them, slim, glasses, wearing a weathered UT Austin hoodie, walked up to Danielle without so much as glancing at the imposters. "You good?" he asked, calm as if they were discussing lunch. Danielle nodded. "They touched me." The man turned to Nichols and Breck, who were now frozen in place. "Both of you, hands where I can see them." Nichols looked like he wanted to run. "You take one step," the hoodie guy said, "and I'll personally make sure you're federally processed before you can blink." Breck raised his hands slowly. "Not so tough now, huh?" Danielle murmured. Hoodie guy pulled out a badge, real one, quietly flipped it open just long enough for the two men to get a look. "Federal Task Force. You two clowns just impersonated housing officials, attempted entry, and laid hands on a resident under surveillance protection." Nichols started to speak, but Hoodie raised a hand. "Don't bother. We've been watching you. You've been on 5 blocks this month alone, targeting homes owned by black residents, using fake violations, fake uniforms, fake threats." Danielle crossed her arms. "Told you it was a mistake." But what came next wasn't just about arrests. It was about uncovering the pattern and making sure these two weren't just puppets in something even uglier. Danielle didn't move from her spot. The men with badges had it under control, and she wasn't about to play into anyone's idea of panic. She sat back down in her chair, calm again, legs crossed, watching like it was just another episode on TV. Inside her house, the surveillance system continued its quiet work. 4 live camera angles from the porch, street, hallway, and kitchen window fed into a secure server. She had access from her phone. The feds had access from theirs. None of this was an accident. The man in the hoodie, real name Terrence Mays, nodded once toward the SUV, signaling the other agents to move in. Breck and Nichols were cuffed, quietly, without a struggle. Their mouths moved like they wanted to say something, maybe to explain it all away, but nobody cared. Danielle glanced toward Terrence. "They on the list?" Terrence gave a short laugh. "Breck, yes, Nichols, new face, probably a recent recruit." "So they're recruiting now?" she asked. Terrence's face tightened. "Yep, started about 8 months ago. Somebody's organizing this, Danielle. It's not just random harassment anymore. We've had incidents in Arizona, Oregon, even parts of Ohio. Always the same thing. Black homeowners get approached by fake HOA enforcers, threatened, intimidated, sometimes even burglarized later." Danielle didn't blink. "And how many people have you stopped?" "Not enough." She stood again, slow and deliberate. Her eyes followed the agents as they began to sweep Nichols and Breck's vehicle, an older model black Dodge Durango with no tags on the front and a missing parking permit. Classic sloppiness. "They were getting bolder," she said. "They didn't even try to hide it." "That's why we activated your node early," Terrence said. "We had you on the passive watch list. You were supposed to just report anything suspicious, but your last 2 flag entries were sharp, accurate. You spotted a pattern faster than our data pull." Danielle smirked. "I didn't forget how to hunt." Terrence nodded toward the car. "They had burner phones in the glove box, body cams that weren't recording, just for show. Looks like they've been filming the homeowners, though." Danielle's eyes narrowed. "To what? Humiliate them online? Build a case?" "Worse. To document which homes had what. Cameras, locks, patterns. Some of those clips were time-stamped weeks before they made contact. They're building profiles." Danielle sighed. "This isn't about HOA violations." "Nope. It's organized intimidation." Across the street, Brenda Littlefield had her curtains pulled halfway open, watching, pretending not to. Danielle caught it, held her gaze. Brenda flinched and yanked the curtain closed. Terrence followed her eyes. "Neighborhood still treating you sideways?" Danielle gave a dry laugh. "Only when they think I can't hear them." He nodded. "You want us to escalate presence out here? Regular drive-bys? Or keep it low and tight?" "Keep it low," she said. "If they're watching, let them keep thinking I'm alone." Terrence stepped a little closer, lowered his voice. "You sure you want to stay here?" Danielle paused for a moment, then looked out toward the quiet street, the perfect hedges, the mailbox with her name printed in clean black letters. I've lived in war zones with less tension than this cul-de-sac, she said. But I'm not going anywhere. That's the whole point. They want us to feel like we don't belong, like we're visitors in our own homes. Nah. Terrence looked proud. We'll monitor the comms, he said. We'll sweep for connections between these two and whoever's running the ops in Oregon. If anything comes back dirty, we'll knock again. Danielle nodded. You know where to find me. He gave her a two-finger wave and walked back to the SUV. Danielle picked up her coffee, still warm, and took another sip. But as the black SUVs pulled away and the street grew still again, Danielle knew the story wasn't over. Not yet. There were bigger questions now, and someone else out there pulling the strings. The next week rolled in quiet. Too quiet. No strange cars, no shady visitors, no Brenda with her binocular stares. The neighborhood almost felt normal. But Danielle knew better. Quiet only meant one of two things. Either the storm was done, or it was just circling for a second pass. She spent her time checking camera feeds, cleaning weapons she no longer carried officially, and filing notes with Terrence's task force through the encrypted system. They hadn't heard from Nichols or Breck since the arrest. No court dates, no media noise, no warnings to the community. And that was suspicious. Then on Wednesday afternoon, a notification popped up on her phone. Movement on the back alley cam. A gray Toyota Camry with no plates had crept past her garage. Too slow to be accidental. Too late in the day for deliveries. Danielle didn't panic. She marked the footage, texted the timestamp to the task force, and waited. 2 hours later, the same car was parked across from the local post office 3 blocks down. Same car, same driver, sitting. That night, Danielle sent one line to Terrence. They're back, watching patterns. I want in on the setup. 3 days later, she was sitting in a rental car 5 neighborhoods away, not as bait this time, but part of the trap. Terrence had greenlit a sting operation. The plan? Leak a phony HOA complaint through one of their known forums, claiming a homeowner had refused to comply, was wealthy, had no security, and could be moved on. All of it fake. The home was wired up, the cameras live, agents in place inside and across the street. Danielle volunteered to play the homeowner. She insisted. I know how these guys think, she said. They don't want confrontation. They want easy targets. They need to feel in control. I'll give them just enough rope. The house they used was perfect. Empty, staged just right. Porch furniture slightly out of line. A camera just a little too visible. Lights on a timer. Curtains slightly open. Every detail calculated to draw them in. And sure enough, on the second night, they came. 3 of them, this time. One was Nichols. Danielle recognized him the second he stepped out of the black Ford Escape with dark tints and walked up the porch like he still believed he had a badge. The other 2 were new. One older, bald, stocky, moved like he used to be military. The other was younger, jittery, constantly scanning like he was waiting to hear sirens. Danielle watched from the monitor van 2 houses down, heart beating steady, controlled. Nichols knocked once, then tried the handle. It opened. Inside, agents waited behind false walls. The men entered, flashlights on. One whispered, "Go left, check the office." They were casing the place like it was routine. Then came the takedown. Terrence hit the signal. Doors burst open. Agents flooded in from the backyard front and second floor. Federal agents on the ground, yelling, confusion. One of them tried to run, didn't make it past the porch. Nichols froze, hands shaking. They'd been caught red-handed. Outside, Danielle stepped out of the van and walked up the driveway as the men were cuffed and lined up. Nichols looked up and saw her. "You," he said. "This was you?" Danielle crouched slightly to meet his eyes. "You didn't just pick the wrong house, you picked the wrong woman. Twice." The older man tried to speak, but Terrence cut him off. "Save it. We already pulled your texts. You've been targeting black homeowners from fake HOA sites for over a year. You're not enforcement. You're predators." Nichols looked pale now. "We weren't gonna hurt nobody." "Tell that to the woman in Tucson who got her front door kicked in," Terrence snapped. "Or the family in Portland who had to move after your people inspected their home while they were out of town." Danielle stepped back, letting the agents do their work. The sting had worked, but it wasn't just about catching a few impersonators. It was about pulling apart the whole network, shining light where folks thought they could move in shadows. But for Danielle, this was personal, and she wasn't done. Not until every last one of them knew she wasn't afraid, and she wasn't alone. The next morning, Mission Viejo looked the same on the surface. Manicured lawns, sprinkler systems whispering through flower beds, mailboxes lined up like soldiers. But something had shifted. Word got out fast. Danielle didn't tell anyone. She didn't need to. People talked. And whatever rumors were floating around about black SUVs, federal agents, or men being dragged off in cuffs at 3 a.m., they were loud enough to echo across fences. She stepped onto her porch just before 8 a.m., coffee in hand. Same chair, same plant, same rhythm. Only today, the silence wasn't cold. It was different, heavy, like people weren't sure what to do with what they knew now. Across the street, Brenda Littlefield's blinds twitched again, but this time the curtain didn't drop. Brenda actually stepped outside, robe, slippers, and all. Danielle didn't move. Brenda walked across the lawn like every step was an argument with her pride. She stopped at the edge of the walkway. I saw the news, she said quietly. Danielle didn't answer. Brenda cleared her throat. They said those men had been doing that all over, impersonating officials, breaking into people's homes. Danielle raised an eyebrow. Yep. Brenda stared at her feet. I guess I owe you an apology. Danielle took a slow sip of coffee. Let the moment stretch. I didn't believe you, Brenda added, when you said they weren't legit. I thought, well, I didn't think you were lying. I just didn't want to get involved. Danielle gave a short nod. You didn't have to believe me. You just had to pay attention. Brenda swallowed. I get that now. Silence again. Danielle looked out over the street. You know what the real violation is in this neighborhood? Brenda looked up. Comfort, Danielle said. People get so used to things being a certain way, they start thinking anything different must be wrong, but difference doesn't mean danger. Brenda looked like she wanted to say something else, but didn't. She turned to go, then paused. I won't be ignoring things anymore, she said quietly. And if anyone else comes around pretending to be something they're not, I'll make sure they regret it. Danielle gave a small smile. Good. Keep your eyes open, Brenda. Brenda walked back home without looking over her shoulder. Later that day, Terrence called. His voice was tired but satisfied. They flipped. Which one? All three. Nichols gave up the forum admins. Older guy rolled on the money trail. We're talking paper address list, Danielle. Home info for sale. Privacy's been for sale and we didn't even know it. Danielle nodded, not surprised. You did good, he added. Hell, you did more than good. Danielle didn't answer right away. Then, they're not done. No, Terrence said, but we're watching now, and so are you. They hung up. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, Danielle sat on her porch again. She thought about all the homes across the country where someone was watching the street a little too closely, where folks with nothing better to do built stories in their heads about who belonged and who didn't. She also thought about the people who would never know she helped stop something bigger than a fake uniform. And that was fine, because this wasn't about recognition. It was about standing your ground, about not backing down just because someone in a polo shirt told you to. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take it from you, even when they come dressed like they belong. Because sometimes the most dangerous people aren't the ones kicking in the door. They're the ones knocking, smiling, and hoping you'll be too scared to ask questions. Danielle asked, and then she answered, with receipts, footage, and a plan that reminded everyone, you don't get to decide where I belong. I do. Know your rights, trust your instincts, don't let fake power scare you into silence, and when you know something's wrong, say something, even if your voice shakes. If you or someone you know has experienced harassment or intimidation disguised as authority, report it. Speak up. Document everything. And never forget, your home is your ground. Stand on it.